Hey everyone, welcome back to Python Code Nemesis. Today we'll be looking at integration testing with Cypress. So, in a gist, a lot of times we test our applications, we test the backend APIs, we test end-to-end flows, edge-to-edge cases, unit tests, in like regression tests, integration tests, a lot of it. But most of the times, every backend is integrated with some or the other UI, and that needs to be tested with a complete end-to-end flow where the whole clicking on buttons in the UI, entering some data and everything needs to be checked. So that cannot be done with backend testing or integration testing. So it cannot be done with like Python specifically or any backend frameworks like you test with. So what is the solution? That's Cypress. So Cypress lets you test your front end, and that's mostly based on like front end testing. It'll like enter some data, wait for some time, click on buttons and stuff like that. So how do you test with Cypress? We'll look at a quick example. So integration testing is a software testing method in which individual units of an application are tested in multiple ways to determine if they function together as intended. Integration testing focuses on testing the interactions and interfaces between different units of code rather than the functionality of individual units. So the agenda of this video will be integration testing, Cypress testing, create an application with Flask and React and test that application with Cypress. So if you're a beginner, this is definitely a video you should be looking at. So what is integration testing and why is it important? Integration testing is necessary because it helps identify issues that may not be apparent during unit testing, such as problems with the data flow or communication between different code modules. It also helps ensure that the application as a whole is working correctly and meets the user's needs. Integration testing differs from unit testing in that unit testing focuses on testing individual code units in isolation rather than the whole flow. In contrast, integration testing focuses on testing the interactions and interfaces between different code units. Unit testing is typically done by developers while a separate testing team does unit integration testing. Additionally, unit testing is typically done in the development process very early, while integration testing is typically done later in the development process when most of the modules are integrated with each other and are working together. Integration testing is the type of testing that focuses on the interactions between different components of your application. In Cypress, the integration testing can be done by creating test cases that simulate user interactions with the application and asserting that expected behavior occurs. To start with this, first install Cypress. For that, you must have Node.js and npm installed on your system. So if you want to install Node and then Cypress, you do an npm, that is Node Package Manager, install Cypress --save-dev. So Cypress uses Mocha as its test runner and Chai as its assertion library. To create a new test file, you can use this command, npx cypress open. This command creates a new folder named Cypress in your project where you can find the test files. Next, you will have to write the test cases. Cypress uses a JavaScript API to interact with the browser, so you can write test cases using JavaScript. For example, to test a website's login feature, you can write a test case that simulates a user entering their username and password and clicking the login button. Then you can assert that the user is redirected to the correct page after a successful login. Run the test cases. To run the test cases, you can use the following command, npx cypress run. This command runs all the test cases in the Cypress integration folder. So this is just generic syntax, just a run through of all the very generic syntax that Cypress uses. And then finally, after running the tests inside them you will assert the results, where Cypress uses the chai assertion library to assert that the results of the test cases match the expected results. For example, after a successful login, you can assert that the user is redirected to the correct page by checking the URL of the current page. Interacting with a web page. Cypress makes it easy to interact with the web page using its API. You can use the cy.get method to select elements on the page and the .type, .click, and .should methods to simulate user interactions and assert the results. For example, you can get cy.get hash username, .type my username to enter text in an input field, and cy.get hash login button .click to click a button. Debugging. Cypress provides a built-in browser-based test runner that makes it easy to debug your test cases. You can use the debugger statement to pause the test execution at a specific point and inspect the application state. There's a few additional features such as automatic waiting, automatic retries, and the ability to take screenshots and videos of the test execution that help to improve your test's reliability and maintainability. Create an application with Flask and React. Time to create an application with Flask and React and perform integration testing using Cypress. Create a new directory for your project, navigate to it, and create a new virtual environment using the command python -m venv, which creates a new environment called env. Activate the virtual environment with source env/bin/activate. Then inside this virtual environment, install Flask using pip install Flask, and Flask cores. Very important, cross-origin resource sharing has to be enabled if you want to host something locally and if you want the backend and frontend talking to each other. Otherwise, it'll just not work with your frontend. Create a new file called app.py and import Flask. Create a new Flask application and define a route that returns some data in JSON format. So we also have this, like we created a new Flask app, enable cores on it, have this new route called /data, also has this cross-origin decorator. So dev data returns a message, hello world, and this is just running the app in debug mode. So create a new directory for your React application and navigate to it. Use the create React app to create a new application. npx create React app, my app. In the new directory, you can start the development server with the command npm start. In the React application, you can make an API call to your Flask endpoint and display the data on the front end. For example, you can create a new component called data.js and make an API call in the useEffect hook. So just fetch this. Do you have Axios here? No, right? So we're just directly fetching it. So you're fetching this localhost 5000/data, which is our backend API, and it converts the result to JSON and then sets the data and then returns the division data.message. Now that your application is running, you can start writing Cypress tests. First, you will need to install Cypress with npm install Cypress save dev. Next, create a directory called Cypress in the root of your project and run npx cypress open to open the Cypress test runner. So you will be navigated to this page which tells you about, which is like a new window called Cypress with the Cypress testing demo main, talks about whatever is new in Cypress. You can test multi-origin workflows, test isolation, and a lot of new stuff that's up there. And there's the link for the docs as well. You can also log in. You will be moving on to this page, which is the Cypress testing demo, and which welcomes you to Cypress. And there's two options here, E2E testing and component testing. Based on your requirements, you can choose either of those. We will go with E2E testing because we want to test end to end. Now, there's like a bunch of configuration files that were added to to the project automatically, that Cypress does this automatically. So there's config.js, e2e.js, commands.js, and example.json. So there's like an example that you can look at as well. Once you click on continue, you will be able to see this example. Now we'll write our own test with Cypress. In the Cypress test runner, you can create a new test file by clicking the new spec button. So this is the Cypress runner, and then once you go to specs, you can create a new spec, which is a new specification. So add code to the newly created test file from the editor of your choice. I chose VS Code as I'm editing my tests on it. Before running the test, go to localhost 3000 and check if the web page is correctly rendered. If it is, then you'll be able to see the below screen. So I have this simple web page which just shows Python code Nemesis and a hello world message. So now you'll have to write the test case. So this is the small test case to check that the correct test is displayed on the page after the API call. So describe data, it displays data, that is cy.visit, localhost 3000, cy.contains hello world, and we can also do a cy.contains Python code Nemesis. So once you run the above test file, you'll get this output. So it will check this and the assertion will be correct. So this test will pass, because this is what we are checking, cy.contains. Now update the test file to check if the page contains the fake Python code Nemesis. Once you rerun the test, this case will also pass because both these texts are in there. So that's two assertions now. So next you can use Cypress's cy.request method to send requests to your Flask endpoint and assert that the response data is correct. So this is where you can also test your backend with Cypress. cy.request, localhost 5000/data, then response. Expect response.status equal to 200 and expect response.body to have property message, and the value would be hello world. So this is some syntax which is also there in the docs. You can look at it. When we run this test, we get this result. So as you can see, there's 3 assertions which were correct. So that's it. All the code for this tutorial is available on GitHub. So if you're building something and you're thinking of like creating it, like extending it out, that definitely you should have Cypress tests, because as the code base gets bigger and there's more and more people contributing to it, it'll be hard to maintain like the flows and check to make sure, like if you have to manually run the UI every time and check if it's all working, that's going to be hard. So writing Cypress tests for that would be a great idea. So all the code is available on my GitHub. So we had the confusion. In this video, we have covered the basics of integration testing, explained its importance to ensure the quality of our apps. We have introduced Cypress, which is a robust testing framework that allows developers to write end-to-end tests in a simple and efficient manner. We have demonstrated how to set up a simple web application with the front-end and back-end using React and Flask. We then use Cypress to write and run integration tests for our application, covering both front-end and back-end components. By following the examples in this article, you should now understand how to write integration tests for your web applications using Cypress. With the knowledge gained, you can also write comprehensive tests for your apps and ensure their functionality and quality over time. So that's it for this video. Feel free to leave feedback in comments. If you like this video, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video on Python Code Nemesis. Happy coding!